G'day there folks, Connor here again, and we're back with some more stories from Reddit. As always, if you enjoy these videos, be sure to hit like and subscribe and all that stuff, and let's get straight to the stories. Alright folks, we're starting on relationship advice. This one was written by a throwaway account, and it's titled, "My friend always wants to cook for everyone, but his cooking is really bad." About 6 months ago, I moved across the country to a new state where I have a lot of friends and family. I posted about my move on Facebook, and Michael, a Facebook friend, or an acquaintance I'd met once or twice through other friends, reached out to tell me he happened to be moving to the same city and asked if I would want to get together sometime. I agreed, and after we had both moved and settled, we met up. We became friendly and started hanging out semi-regularly. I have a lot of friends and family in this state, as I mentioned. Work also keeps me very busy, so I don't have a ton of free time. Michael moved here because he recently got a divorce. He has an old friend, 30s male, who owns a house here who agreed to rent him a room. They also have a third roommate, 30s male. Michael does not have a job, so he has a lot of free time, and he's usually the one to initiate hangouts. So, Michael loves to cook. The very first time we got together, he came to my place and cooked dinner. The meal was okay, although it was dairy-based and I really don't eat dairy at all, so I felt pretty sick afterwards. I was also pretty specific about a certain ingredient that I don't really like, but he was insistent that he needed to use it for the dish. Whatever, no biggie. However, as time went on, every time Michael would invite me to hang out, he wanted to cook. Either he wanted to come to my place and cook, or he wanted me to come over and he would cook for me and the roommates and their significant others. Each time I ate Michael's cooking, I began to think more and more that I really just could not stand it. The first time he cooked for me and his roommates, I noticed that everyone at the table was silent when eating, and no one else commented on the food until he would eagerly ask, "How is it?" and get some sort of lackluster praise. He did this at least 3 times during the meal. Probably the worst time was the time that no one could finish their plate and everyone made excuses for why they were just so full they couldn't finish the meal. After that incident, whenever Michael would invite me to hang out, I would try suggesting other activities. We live in a place that is full of fun, socially distanced outdoor activities, so I would frequently suggest those things. He would always decline and try to convince me to come to his place so that he could cook for us. He has told me that the thing that brings him the greatest joy is cooking for other people. Due to this, I kind of started to distance myself and just politely decline his invitations. Last night, I got a message from Michael that he had a huge falling out with his roommate, and he was very upset. I texted with him for a while, trying to calm him down and give him some advice about how to handle the situation. He was so upset that eventually I asked if he wanted to come over for a beer so that he could get out of the house and clear his head. He asked if I'd already eaten, and I said that I had. It was almost 8 by that point, and he asked if he could come over tomorrow, or today, instead. I said sure. He replied with, "Great, I'll stop at the store and cook X dish for us." I told him actually I'm on a diet and I couldn't eat that, but he was welcome to come over for drinks and some video games. He just kept pushing, asking about my diet and what I could eat, and finally suggested something that I would have no reason to say no to. This morning when I woke up, I was so dreading his meal that I texted him that I forgot I'd made plans this evening. I told him I'd be home around 8, too late for dinner, and he was still welcome to come over then, or we could try for another night. I don't really know what to do about this guy. I feel bad because he hardly knows anyone here, and now it looks like he's on bad terms with his roommates, and I know he probably really needs a friend right now, but he's so insistent on feeding me every single time we get together. I think if I tell him that I can't stand his cooking, it will honestly be more hurtful than just fading out of his life. Oh man, yeah, it would probably crush him, but sometimes people like this need honest truths. Let's go to the comments. I would be straight up with my friend regarding something they created, whether it was a plan for a deck they're considering or their cooking. Even without the awful food, I'd really have my back up about someone that was so insistent on feeding me all the time. It's weird and kinda overstepping, especially when you've tried to say no. Dude, just tell him the truth. If it's the end of the friendship because of his bruised ego, so be it. You're supposed to enjoy time with your friends. Life is too short to be suffering through his meals. Why don't you pay to go to a cooking class or classes with him? Might be a chance for him to find like-minded people and relieving the pressure on yourself to be his sole support network. He'll get better at cooking as well as socializing, and then he can hear from a pro what he's doing wrong, instead of being offended if you were to say it's not good. Ultimately, he'll appreciate the thoughtful gift and will possibly see it as a good thing. Alright, onto an update. So my post didn't get a lot of attention, but I still felt like it deserved an update. After posting and thinking about things, I realised that it wasn't just about the cooking. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, but I really didn't care to be friends with Michael anymore. He never wanted to do anything I suggested, and that really bothered me. I felt like our entire friendship was just about me making time to do what he enjoyed, cooking for us, even though I got nothing out of it at all. After that, I started to distance myself from Michael. I would put hours between answering his texts and politely decline any invites. I was also in an accident a few weeks ago, and I'm now on a medication that makes me very tired, so I have limited free time. Then, one night, around midnight, I got a text from Michael saying that he was worried about me. When I asked why, he replied with, "You used to be my best friend, but now you just ignore me." There were a bunch of typos, so I could tell that he had been drinking. I told him I'd been busy and also pointed out that I'd actually invited him to do a lot of things with me, but he always turned down my invites. He acknowledged that was true, apologised, and said that in the future, if I asked him to do things I enjoy, he'd be sure to accept. 3 days later, he messaged me again, asking when I was free to hang out. I replied with, "What do you have in mind?" I wanted to hear what he wanted to do before committing to hanging out. He kept pushing, just saying he'd like to see me, and he'd be available anytime I was free. I finally gave him a time frame, to which he replied he'd love to come over and cook for us. That was just the final straw, so I sent him the following message. Quote, "Hey, so to be honest, you're a nice person, but I'm not interested in hanging out tonight or at all. The time that we've spent together has made me realise that we don't actually have that much in common, and when you weren't into any of the stuff I enjoy doing, I lost interest in the friendship. Combined with the fact that I still have so much pain from my accident, it just seems like too much effort. No hard feelings, I really do wish you the best." I blocked him after that. Maybe I'm a jerk for the way that I handled the situation, but life feels too short to waste so much time doing what other people want. I never advocate for myself and always end up in these types of draining, one-sided friendships, so I feel proud of what I said and relieved to be moving past this situation. Edit, there are a lot of people defending Michael and calling me a horrible person. In my last post, I mentioned that he had a falling out with his roommates. They actually asked him to move out because he was being so disrespectful and aloof. I didn't include it in my post because I didn't want to be unfairly harsh. Now I see that the way I described Michael made people sympathise with him, and that's honestly given me more food for thought than anything. I couldn't even describe how awful he was to a bunch of internet strangers without feeling bad. A lot of people are also just making blind assumptions about him, and every single one is so far from reality. I guess we should all take Reddit posts with a grain of salt. One comment says, "I totally understand why this happened. Unfortunately, Michael probably thinks he's trying hard to be social and puts efforts into his friendship, so he just can't understand why he doesn't get the same effort back. He's probably lonely, and you can find a lot of lonely people complaining about this. But he's awkward and has a hard time reading or understanding your cues, or I dare say caring about your cues and messages about what you do and don't want to do. It's hard to be friends with someone like that, and to be honest, Michael probably doesn't have a lot of friends." Opie replies, "Very insightful. I mentioned at the end of my post that I end up in a lot of friendships like this. I have sympathy for people like this, and I usually endure the friendship because I feel for them. But honestly, I think I'm at a point in my life where I'm just over being that person. Friendships need to go both ways, and I'm tired of giving so much time to people who I get no enjoyment from being with." Quote, "I wanted to hear what he wanted to do before committing to hanging out. He kept pushing, just saying he'd like to see me and he'd be available anytime I was free. He was trying to act on your previous feedback and wanted you to suggest something you wanted to do before he suggested anything. You forced his hand by pushing him to suggest something and blew up at him when he offered the one thing he thought he was good at that would help you out, which you've never once told him you didn't enjoy but continued to do." Opie replies, "I didn't want to put seemingly unnecessary detail in my post. I have invited Michael to go hiking at least 4 times. I've also invited him to go ice skating, snow tubing, skiing, driving in the mountains, and even on a weekend trip to a nearby state. He has declined every single invite, instead asking me to come over and try his cooking or watch TV. I even offered to pay for him on the more expensive activities, even though he doesn't need me to, as an incentive to get him to join. Those are all super physical activities, and he sounds like more of a homebody if he likes cooking and watching TV. I agree you probably weren't compatible as friends, but ghosting him, re-engaging with him, and then about-facing and sending a Dear John all sounds a bit much. And you were never honest with him in any of it. I just really feel for the guy, damn. I mean, I like to cook, but I'm no good at it, lol, and watch TV, and I would never want to do any of those activities. Not even if someone else paid. Not even if someone paid me to do it, lol. But I know this, and I avoid having a good friends status with anyone because I don't want to socialise the way other people do. I've pretty much done the same thing before with a friend. Sent her a message telling her that while I liked her, I didn't really enjoy when we hung out, and didn't want to anymore. Sounds like a breakup, and in a way I guess it is, lol. OP replies, yeah, I'm getting a lot of hate for it, but I just don't see why I should continue to be friends with someone I don't like hanging out with. We don't enjoy the same things. I tried to drift away slowly and he wouldn't have it, so I had to treat it like a breakup. You don't have to continue hanging out with anyone you don't want to, and you can break off a friendship whenever you like. Nobody is telling you to continue being friends with him. Just don't be a dick and actually tell the guy instead of him thinking you were great friends and you blocking him from out of the blue. Total dick move. Tell the guy, sorry, I don't like your cooking at all and want to do other activities. I had a few friends just ghost me like this, and to this day I have no idea why. I thought they were really good friends. Yeah, some varied opinions on OP's method here. Now for a final update. I got a lot of hate on my last post here, and at first I couldn't really understand why. One person who continued to comment angrily was this user, so I actually ended up messaging him privately to ask why he thought I was such a villain. It turned out to be a really productive conversation. I gave him some more details about the situation and really ended up realizing that the issue was deeper than I made it out to be. I'd left some details out of my original post, thinking that they were not necessarily relevant, only to realize that they were the true root of the problem. Thanks to that user for letting me get stuff off of my chest and encouraging me to make another post. So I will provide those details, and surprisingly, even to me, new events have occurred, and I'll share those as well. When Michael and I first moved to the state we live in, we were both romantically interested in one another. We had been online friends for a while, having only met once briefly in real life, and I think we expected more to develop between us when we moved to the same city. I did not mention this at all in my post because after spending some time together, I realized that I didn't feel that way towards him anymore. I told him that up front, and we agreed to continue to be friends. Initially, one of the biggest reasons that we connected was over our shared love of outdoor activities. So for everyone guessing that Michael was unable to or disinterested in the hikes and trips I'd planned, that just wasn't true. He's very physically fit, and early on expressed a huge interest in these activities. However, when he wanted to hang out, he always wanted to hang out at one of our houses, and almost always, this led us to being in situations where he would want to lay on the couch, and gradually lead into trying to cuddle with me. So while I disliked his cooking, I guess that really I just felt like he was never respectful of the boundary that I'd set when I told him I only wanted to be friends. I was channeling my anger into his mediocre food. I tried hard to maintain a friendship by inviting him to do the things he'd already told me that he loved, but he never wanted to, and this led me to feel like he was disingenuous, which ultimately ended with me telling him off and blocking him. Many people read what I did and saw it as cruel, but I felt like this person did not respect me, and I didn't feel like what I did was wrong. However, there's more. The day after I made the post, I came home from work and found a stuffed animal on my doorstep with an apology note. It just said, "Sorry for being a bad friend." I thought about it for a couple of days and decided that maybe I had been overly harsh. I unblocked Michael and I thanked him for the stuffed animal. Then I apologized for blocking him and told him basically what I said here, that I felt like he didn't respect my boundaries and he didn't really value my friendship because he never wanted to do anything that I suggested. I expected him to be defensive, but he actually apologized profusely. He told me that the situation with his roommates had been deteriorating for the last 2 months, and he was physically and mentally exhausted, which is why he never wanted to do anything. Every time he declined my invites, he could feel that we were drifting apart as friends, but he was focusing on trying to manage the issues at home. One thing he apologized for was being unable to communicate to me what was going on at home. He also recognized that he had pushed my boundaries and tried to move things in a direction that was not platonic, and he apologized for that as well. In fact, he sent me a very long, seemingly heartfelt message that I really found touching. He told me that the day I'd sent him that message and blocked him, he realized that between pushing away his one friend here and having such major problems with his roommates, he just did not want to stay in the city. The day he left the plush on my doorstep, he also packed a U-Haul and moved back home to his parents' house. So in the last 2 days, we've both apologized a lot and sort of resumed our superficial, meme-sharing, internet long-distance friends relationship that we had for a year prior to both moving to the same state. He said he hopes that one day when he's in a better place, we can meet up again, and I can know him as the person he really is. Not that exciting, but I guess a happier ending than I expected. Thanks to everyone who chimed in. Even the criticisms really helped me unpack the issue that I was having. Also, a lot of people really wanted me to tell him his cooking was bad, but I decided not to. It just felt like kicking him while he was down, and ultimately the cooking was irritating me mostly because of the events surrounding it. Maybe if we hang out again in person someday, we can laugh about it. But for now, I communicated what was really upsetting me, and he had the opportunity to explain his behavior and apologize, so I think it was as constructive as it could be. Yeah, wow, a rare good ending for Reddit, I suppose. But that context was really lacking from that first post. That would have changed everything. Let's read some final comments. His cooking is bad and I really don't like it. He also tries to cuddle me when I don't want it, but the cooking is so bad. To be fair, it sounds like his number one way of pushing or breaking boundaries is in his cooking. The way he would try to cook for people who didn't want him to cook, or use ingredients people asked he not use. It could be that she fixated on it because it's what bothered her the most of all his actions. This is such a great example of how Reddit posts that seem like they can capture a situation can be framed in a way that completely misses what happens. I genuinely think a huge amount of posts here are like that, but hey, what can you do? About halfway in, I was rolling my eyes and thinking, someone who is obsessed with getting into your home and doing an activity which requires remaining at your home is obsessed with getting into your pants. So when OP comes back and says, yeah, stomping boundaries, wants to be romantic, it was kind of a duh for me. Sadly, telling people their cooking sucks is one of the most difficult things possible. I'm a very blunt person, and even I tread very carefully around food, since I've even met people who totally lose their marbles if you just tell them that you generally don't like their signature dish, no matter who cooks it, simply because you can't stand the main ingredient and nothing can be done to it, it suddenly makes you like it. I'm by far not a picky eater, and I forced down a lot of things to not hurt people's feelings, as long as it was just a few bites and I knew the dish was good, just not my taste. I had what I thought was a really close friend literally berate me for not liking mushrooms. The truth is, a teacher in cooking class once forced me to eat mushrooms when I was already queasy that day, and I got so violently sick from eating that I could never again eat whole cooked mushrooms. It's not so much the taste, it's the consistency. The feeling of mushrooms in my mouth makes me sick. I told her so repeatedly, and she always tried to convince me I just had to try another version, another way of preparation or whatever. Then she tried to hide some mushrooms in a fish she cooked, and when I bit in it, I barely reached the toilet in time to not puke in her kitchen. And she lost it, absolutely not accepting that I just can't eat mushrooms, as if that was a personal affront. So even my super blunt German ass is very careful criticizing people's cooking. I totally understand why OP didn't want to do it. Nothing gets more aggressive than a rejected foodie. I have to know exactly how the cooking was bad, because it could be anything from using flavors that don't complement each other to actual literal food poisoning. I understand having a bad cooking day, but everything this guy is making is bad? I can't even imagine what he's doing wrong. Some people have very poor sense of smell or taste and just can't grasp the subtle impact ingredients can have, so they either skip them or add too much. And some people are lazy or focused on efficiency, and they throw everything into the pot at once instead of browning the meat, then caramelizing the onions, etc., without realizing how much flavor comes from those steps. Yeah, who knows, but one thing's for sure, it was bad enough to lead to the demise of their relationship, so that's saying something. Anyway guys, that's it for that story, and that's it from me today. Hope you enjoyed that one. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good day. Cheers.